Yeah. Hello and welcome to the Ourlads Fantasy Football Show. My name is Ryan McKee. I am joined with our Duke of Depth Charts, Tucker Maus. How's it going, Tucker?
It's going great. How are you doing, Ryan?
All right. Yeah, you gotta talk. You can't just wave because we do have audio listeners as well.
Is my mic not working?
No, you just
We're
waved
good?
it first, and then yeah.
Oh,
no,
gotcha.
We
Okay,
can
cool.
hear you now. We can hear you now. Good to see you, my man. Today we are going to talk about the Jordan Addison DUI arrest, what that means for fantasy, if it means anything for this season. We're going to talk about the DraftSharks Injury Guide. Going to just kind of introduce that as a tool, how it works. Can walk you through it. Tucker and I will show you how we've used it in the past and how we're going to use it for this upcoming season. And then I thought the third topic, since we don't have a lot of news to go off of, Dynasty Startups. Are you going to start a Dynasty League? What does that mean? Tucker is in a Dynasty Startup right now, so I thought we could be interesting to talk through that a little bit. I'm in a Dynasty League myself. It's been going on for 5 years. Tons of fun. Love it. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So let's just get into it. First up, Jordan Addison, arrested, suspicion of DUI. He has already come out and apologized for it, so he's probably guilty. He was passed out in his car, and not something we should laugh about, even though I'm kind of chuckling as I say this. But it's just kind of a crazy story. That's why I'm laughing. Not because it's not dangerous and not funny, you know. Let's just be glad that he is okay physically. And so immediately, now that we know he's okay and everything, our mind goes, what does this mean for fantasy football? Does he get a suspension this season? How many games is it? Is there anybody else on the Minnesota Vikings roster who can play wide receiver besides him, Justin Jefferson?
Mm-hmm.
So I did a little research into this, and the official policy of the NFL is it's a 1 game suspension. It's at least a 1 game suspension, and then they fine them that 1 game check for a first DUI offense. And he's had he had another arrest, but that was for a speeding, right?
Yeah,
I believe that's what it was.
So it wasn't as major. I remember it like it was before his rookie year. I think he said it was because he was like rushing his dog to the vet or something. So I'm not. Right. I don't know, but this one's a little bit more serious. A
little bit more serious. Definitely a lot more serious. So I don't know if the league will take that into account. They probably will. That he's already had a driving offense, even though it wasn't a DUI offense. But there's a very good chance none of this plays out for this season, right, Tucker?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I thought initially that it could be a longer type suspension, but like you said, reading off kind of how the league deals with this. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't much punishment, if at all. But I feel like it matters just.
I mean, there will be punishment.
Yeah, just not. I don't know.
There will be punishment, but they have to wait until the whole legal process plays out first.
I mean,
and so it might not be until the following season.
Yeah, what I meant for this season, we're probably not going to see much in terms of affecting games. But I feel like it's worth noting, especially if you're in Dynasty and stuff. Do you want, how much of a risk does he pose because of this type of thing, and if this will affect him going forward? Yes.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think it's mostly interesting for Dynasty because right now, according to DraftSharks ADP, he is being drafted as the 57th player overall in Dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about, we talked a little bit about that this morning in our meeting. That Jordan Addison is someone you're really considering picking up in your Dynasty league that you are just starting right now.
Yeah, like I like that. So the tier of wide receiver he's in there, it's like when I'm looking, I don't know what DraftSharks has, but looking at other ADP, I see like Nico Collins, DK Metcalf, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell. So DJ Moore is a little bit higher. But to me, I liked.
Yeah, they have him right there with. They have him just above like Debo Samuel, Stephon Diggs, right behind George Pickens, Xavier Worthy, Tank Dell.
Yeah, so it's like there's other receivers that are similar age to him that we'll see plenty of like Tank Dell. I love Tank Dell, for example, and I feel like this sort of pushes him ahead maybe a little bit in rankings, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, like they don't have much competition on the Vikings, and so that's really only this season that we're kind of looking at that. Right now, it's kind of just the Justin Jefferson, Addison, and then Hawkinson is like the three guys they have. So I don't know how much further it should push him, but when comparing with other young receivers like Tank Dell or like Zay Flowers, I kind of like going with those guys more.
Right, and we should also mention that in this morning's Ourlads meeting, one of our scouts brought up the fact that coming out of college, there were character concerns for Jordan Addison. So this might not be kind of a one-off thing. I mean, let's hope it is. Let's hope he learns his lesson. But, he's already been in trouble with the law twice. He's going into his second season. And it's something that you have to keep in mind. Now, sometimes guys learn their lesson. They grow out of this kind of behavior. But other times, this will plague a player for their whole career.
Yeah, and it's not just like really the crime. It kind of also has to do with the relationship with the organization. I'm just thinking off the spot, like the Kareem Hunt situation that occurred. I know a big problem with that was that he lied to the team about what was happening and like the investigation what was going on with that, and that was a big part of why he got cut. So there's things like that, surrounding this where like the players might not have the same relationship with the organization after things like this happen. And there's only so long of a leash that you have to work with. So I mean, ultimately we'll see what happens this year, but I feel like it's more of a wait and see longer term what punishments and if anything else like this will happen.
Yeah, and I went back and looked at his stats from last season, and I had kind of honestly forgotten how good he was last season. He had 10 touchdowns, 70 receptions. He had 911 yards. He had a lot of games where his fantasy points were in double digits. He had a couple of games where, in the 20s, three or four games in the 20s for fantasy points. And now, got to remember, Justin Jefferson was hurt a big chunk of last season. So he was getting, Jordan Addison was getting a lot more balls thrown his way that he might not this season. But he was really promising his rookie year.
Certainly, like he's one of the more exciting young guys that's in the league right now, and especially like given that he was able to step up without having Justin Jefferson there. Hawkinson, I know, dealt with injury a little bit during the year. It'll be really important for their new quarterback, JJ McCarthy.
If we know, I mean, and that's another thing I wanted to mention is that looking like all probability, Sam Darnold will start the year as the starting quarterback. However, it's just expected that JJ McCarthy will come in at some point and be the future of that team. So if he doesn't, if the team's relationship with Jordan Addison is strained, or the coach's relationship, they're not playing him as much, or he does have to face a suspension, that's something to watch out for as well. Because also, as we talked about this morning in our morning meeting, there's just not much else there in the wide receiver room for the Vikings past Addison and Jefferson.
Yeah, besides that, like last year they had Brandon Powell as well, and right now he's kind of slotted in as like the third starting receiver. But I was pretty surprised that they didn't draft anyone at all this year. I figured they'd get somebody maybe in the middle rounds at least, but they really didn't reinforce it. They just have 2 undrafted rookies that they brought in, but otherwise it's largely just they lost KJ Osborne was like the thing, and he was basically operating as their number 2 last year with Jefferson hurt. So while he's not necessarily a flashy name, he definitely served a purpose for them, and he was reliable for them. So they do need to fill that void. And so besides that, they brought in Trent Sherfield from Buffalo, which he's been kind of a role player before, but the other guys they have do not have that much experience, if any. I know they have a lot of, like, they moved N'Keal Harry to tight end. So they're kind of trying a lot of different guys there. They got Samus Reyes, who's part of the international program at tight end as well. But I expect it'll probably just be Hawkinson. Josh Oliver is more of a blocker. Johnny Munt from the Rams, and then Robert Tonyan is also there. I don't know how much we'll see them using, multiple tight ends. We'll see. But yeah, I would expect them to bring in some veteran receiver. At some point here, because they just need more bodies in that room.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so more than likely, not something most players have to worry about for this season. Jordan Addison probably not going to get suspended this season if everything plays out like we expect. This suspension will probably be a 2 or 3 game suspension when it does finally come down. And it's more a consideration for dynasty players who might be worried about his character concerns going forward if you're going to draft him long term. All right, so moving on, we have our friends over at DraftSharks. I wanted to talk about their tool, the DraftSharks Injury Guide. Now, Tucker, you said you've used this before?
Yeah, it was formerly known as the Sports Injury Predictor. So I remember looking at it quite a bit, just mainly for fantasy purposes to see, like, how often do these guys get hurt? I mean, the aspect they're projecting is really cool, like the percent chance they have of injury in the season and the projected games missed. But I also just like going to the players' like profile, and you can see just their history of injuries in the NFL, just like the raw data. And it's really interesting because you can see like which parts of their body have been hurt more, or if it's only been isolated to one spot being re-injured, or if it's all over their body, because different injuries matter, of course. So
right, like here is Jalen Hurts. You can see right here they have him as a medium risk for injury, and you can see he has 4 injuries on his profile, and it dates back to college.
Yeah, that goes in college. So, even
it goes back to college, so it's not just the NFL, so which is great for the younger players as well. And you can see he, despite being a fairly physical quarterback who takes a lot of hits and runs around, he's been pretty healthy. And just like, hand, finger dislocation, stuff like that. So I kind of went up here to this right here, and we're going to get the players who are very high risk. These are quarterbacks who are very high risk. Justin Fields, Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow. You can tell. Look at Matthew Stafford. 22 injury. I
all over his
mean,
body.
he's had a long career, but geez,
But
that is
he's
really
also known as like an Iron Man though, because he plays through all the injuries he gets.
yeah, he does. He does. He plays a lot. And then I was reading a little bit of how they kind of come to this equation of very high risk, high risk. And it has a lot to do with how new how recent the injuries are, where the injuries are. And I'm assuming that even though Justin Herbert doesn't have a ton of injury history, they're worried about his hand from last season, which is why he's very high risk, more than likely,
that
right?
makes sense. Yeah, I'd assume there's a lot of they're probably putting a lot of weight in, kind of carryover from the previous season, because that happens all the time where guys aren't fully, while they're cleared to play, they're not there's a higher chance of re-injury maybe. And he did have two, yeah. So in January 2023, he had a shoulder labrum tear, and then he had the hand issue last year. It's probably just because of that. I was kind of wondering about that for Herbert as well, because he hasn't had too many injuries, but it's probably just because of the recency of them.
Yeah. However, I was surprised to see that Anthony Richardson, who got hurt twice last season, ultimately in a season-ending injury with a shoulder AC joint sprain. His first injury was a concussion. He's a low risk. Does that seem? And now I guess maybe that's something that has to do with the type of injury he sustained.
One of the issues was concussion, and he had two concussions was the thing. I guess, well, one of them was non-NFL, but I thought that he had another scare during a game. It might not have been an actual concussion, but that was one thing that was kind of worrying. And then, I mean, I know that part of it is that it wasn't, I don't think that they were injuries that occurred when he was rushing. These are actually ones where he was dropping back and passing and got hurt. So it wasn't necessarily because he's a running quarterback that is why, it's definitely important to see the context. And I think that it's not times where it's oh, he should have went down to avoid injury. He's not getting down fast enough. It's more just, people are putting it up to being more unlucky. So apparently they're kind of going with that too. I'm surprised.
Yeah, which answers. I mean, I'm not saying it answers a lot of questions for me, but it certainly makes me feel better about drafting Anthony Richardson this season, because certainly the recent injuries just stand out in our mind.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to expect the person to be more maybe injury risky than they are. I was also surprised as a Cardinals fan that Kyler Murray, low risk. All right. I'll take it. I'm excited.
He had the injury last year. What was the injury from last year? Or what was it, an injury?
Yeah. Well, it was from the previous season. He was coming back from knee ACL tear, grade 3, which was one of those non-contact injuries that he got scrambling. And as a little guy, to be low risk, pretty good.
That's good.
So I would definitely recommend this tool. It is behind their paywall, something you have to pay for. But if you're concerned, if you have a high draft pick, you're concerned about who to take, versus, for example, Christian McCaffrey, very high risk. If you have the number one or just high risk, if they have the number one overall draft pick and you're trying to decide between Christian McCaffrey and maybe one of those stud wide receivers that you like a lot, like a CeeDee Lamb or Tyreek Hill, maybe the injury risk is what puts you over the top.
Yeah, it's certainly something to take into account, and you'll see running backs are crazy because of how many touches they get. It's going to be a lot more likely that they get hurt, I think, than others. But it's certainly something to look at every position across the board, just to look at relatively comparing, McCaffrey and looking at like Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan and seeing, you know, what might be the injury, the projected probability, and then also looking at their history. You know, have they been hurt lately?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we just wanted to introduce that tool to y'all, and you know, we don't know much about how it's built, other than they say they take in all the comprehensive injury database and then they apply advanced machine learning to define and track these trends. So it's AI. Again, get scared, you Luddites who are afraid of AI. Well, AI can tell you how what the percentage of probability is somebody's going to get hurt. So there you go. All right. So moving on to our final topic for today, we are going to, I'm going to move this. All right. We're going to talk about Dynasty Startups. So Tucker, I'm curious, where is this Dynasty Startup who started this new Dynasty League that you're entering into?
Oh, it's my friend group. We do like a redraft, and now we're finally kind of biting the bullet and going into Dynasty, and we'll see how it goes.
You guys think you're mature enough now to go into a Dynasty League?
I don't know how confident. I mean, like, you know, I kind of follow this a good deal, but not everyone does. So I'm interested to see how long everyone stays on board with being consistent, you know, making moves.
Yeah. How big of a league is it going to be?
It's 12 people.
12 teams? Okay, yeah, that's what
we're not doing the
30
team league like I don't know who that was that we had on a show one time.
Yeah. No, I know there's some insane leagues out there. No, I have a 12-team league in my Dynasty, and it's been going on for 5 years. I will say that this will be the 5th year, 5th season. So of the 4 seasons, I got second twice. Not bad. Good. I've made the playoffs every year. I just got unlucky twice. I got to win it this year because getting second twice, it's just a bummer. Yeah. And then, you know, I got to win it this year. But I wanted to talk about the things to keep in mind. And then I'm going to talk about the rankings that I like to use for Dynasty leagues and what's available and what's stuff you have to pay for. So, but first of all, as going into a Dynasty league for the first time, right? Do you have any questions like that are burning a hole in your mind, or that you topics you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, like my main thing is like I'm really interested to see how at least my league members will do it, but how much people balance, you know, the age of players versus going for the youth and trying to win now versus, you know, winning in the future. Kind of the main, you know, sort of aspect of Dynasty that's really fun is that adds a whole new dynamic. You know, you're actually thinking about future seasons, not just this one. So
yeah. So, you know, looking at the you know, if we look at the Dynasty ADP rankings for you know, on DraftSharks, the redraft versus Dynasty, like they have Justin Jefferson number 1 overall because of his age and talent, right? Yeah. And that's different if are you in the Superflex league coming up?
I am Superflex, but yeah, it certainly would be different. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Brendan Martinez, thanks for watching. Brendan says Superflex Dynasty is where it's at. I agree. I definitely mine's Superflex Dynasty as well. He's saying had picks 112 and 2-1 in my Dynasty, enrolled with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Caleb Williams. Wow, they were available in Superflex that late?
Marvin Harrison, so Caleb Williams is like 10th or so in Superflex. So it's not too surprising. Marvin Harrison's around like I think 16 or 15, like ADP. So I like that a lot. The two rookies, that's really exciting.
Oh, sorry. I think we had a computer issue there. What were you saying?
Oh, sorry. I was saying I really like that because they're both rookies and both really exciting players. But they both go around that area. It's not too strange for a super flex startup.
Yeah, so I was thinking about my league who just drafts rookies.
The rookie draft. Yeah.
So this was a startup. This was like a new startup league like you're going into. So that's where the rookies are. Yeah, because like in my rookie draft, Caleb Williams went number 1 for Superflex League, and Marvin Harrison Jr. went number 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. You got to think about, if you're starting a brand new Dynasty League, decide going in what kind of strategy you want. Do you want to try to win immediately and then let the cards fall where they are in the future? And if so, look more at kind of redraft league rankings. And so kind of the win now versus, if you want to build a team for the future, like our boy Brandon Martinez here, go ahead and draft youth for the future for sure. And or somewhere in between those two things, you can try to do both. But sometimes when you hedge your bets too much, you don't end up doing either thing. So that's definitely something to think about. And my personal and we have no affiliation with them, but for rankings, I find what's best is establish the runs dynasty rankings. And as I've mentioned, I've been using them for since I started, and I'm in a league with some pretty guys who take it really seriously, and I've gotten second twice. So I do really like establish the runs dynasty rankings. What dynasty rankings have you been using?
I haven't actually used them before, but I'll have to check them out. A lot of the time I just look at Fantasy Pros, the tried and true just consensus rankings. I don't know if I have like a specific person I like a lot. I think like Sean Corner or something. I think I like his rankings a lot of the time. But
Sean Corner, I used to work with him over at Action Network. Yeah.
Yeah. I followed him a lot back in the day.
The odds maker on Twitter. Yeah, he's really good.
But otherwise, I just kind of look at ADPs and stuff like that because I don't really care too much about. I kind of like to sort of rank them myself, sort of, but I like to see what the ADP is, to see what their artificial price is, so I can then factor that in, because my league mates will, they'll value players how the public values players generally.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a taxi? Are you guys going to have a taxi squad in your league?
Yeah, I think 3 or 4 player taxi squad.
Yeah, I think that's really important in new fantasy league startups, is to talk about whether you're going to have a taxi squad. And a taxi squad is where you can put first and sometimes second year players, depending on what your league rules are. In my league, it's first and second year players, and it really gives you a spot where you can develop your young talent, right? You can put the guys you draft from the rookie drafts each season. You have 4 or 5 spots to stick them and see if they develop or not. Otherwise, you have to really make some hard choices. So definitely, if you're starting a dynasty league, make sure you have a taxi squad. We have 5 spots on mine, and could even go up to 6 spots, I would say, and it would be good. Because I'm going to have to, it's a bummer. I'm going to have to probably drop some players I like this season because I'm just too far. And I drafted some players, and it's a bummer when you draft players and have to drop them right away because you can't even fit them in your squad.
Redraft, you're just dropping guys like left and right every week, but in this, it's a little different.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited for my. I just want to say I'm a Falcons fan, so I've been getting Michael Penix a lot, and he's going to be my taxi squad guy. If I'm able to get him in my league, I'm just going to have him there, just be secure for the future.
When is your draft?
I think it's in a month.
Okay, it's in a month. All right. Well,
yeah, it's like right before preseason. So.
Got it. Yeah, we just had. That's the other thing, is make sure when you start these dynasty leagues, like talk to your friends beforehand and write out a list of rules and decide when your draft is going to be every year, because you want to have it consistent. So, that was something we messed up in my league. We didn't really talk about the future of the league when we started it.
That's a good point. I'll have to bring that up.
Yeah. So if you're going to set a date each year for your draft so guys can plan on it. And then like we do a slow draft for our rookie draft, and we do it in July 1st each year. So it starts, and then it takes like a couple weeks to go, because it's like we give people 24 hours.
I feel like that makes more sense since it's a rookie draft, because there's not as many rounds then, so you can actually do a slow one and it's not too bad.
Yeah. Brendan says he's 8 hour per pick. See, I would rather like have a 8 hour. We have 24 hour, and some of the guys take the entire time and it just goes so slow. But it's a lot of fun. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. It's going to be a short show, not a lot to talk about as far as news, but did want to mention that Tucker and I will be here every Monday at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, to talk fantasy football with you all going forward. This is going to be a show that goes through the season on Mondays at the same time. It's also going to be available on all the podcast streaming platforms as well, so you can listen to it on audio if you don't want to watch the video. And then we are also starting our other shows with regularity. We're going to have our Ourlads scouting show at 5 p.m. Pacific time every Wednesday, and then our Ourlads depth chart show, where Tucker and I and Corey Henke talk about changes in the depth charts and all the news of the NFL. That'll be on 12 p.m. Pacific time on Thursdays. And then our Ourlads gambling show, where Tucker and I get crazy with some gambling and lose money. That'll be on Fridays at 12 p.m. Pacific time. So thank you all for joining us. Please please subscribe, and we will see you again next Monday, if not before.